Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing AI and its relationship with problem definition. Yes, AI. So it's finally being cool, right? I'm very, very fortunate to have Brenda McSheffrey, managing partner and founder from the Kendal project with me to help me understand the application of AI and how problems are such a critical part to the use of AI. Welcome to the podcast, Brendan.
I'm happy to be here. It's terrific to be part of this.
Great. And I've got so many questions. Just listeners, just to give you a bit of a heads up here, Brendan and I spend hours, usually over alcohol or coffee, talking about this stuff. So if we ramble, I do apologize. Obviously, we'll edit out some of those rambles, I hope. So it's to the point. But this is, I'm really thrilled to have you here. Okay, so let's get our listeners up to speed because they've not been on these multiple coffee and alcohol conversations that we've had. Tell us a little bit about the Kendal framework stroke project, what it is, and how did it come about? What's its genesis?
Well, the Kendal project, we see it came about because of our experience building RAG models and training ChatGPT 2 years ago, right as 4.0 came out. And what we developed is what we call the Kendal framework, which is the fastest, most effective way to train both your team and your AI to get what you want out of AI. And it started out of a method that we had almost fallen upon about using classic tools like lean manufacturing tools, TQM tools, bit of agile, a bit of lean startup, a bit of design thinking, and some of the philosophies around problem curation created by the BMNT company in Palo Alto. And so we kind of mashed these things up when we started training AI models 2 years ago. And frankly, we started having results that were extraordinarily accurate incredibly quickly, which led us to working with colleagues out of the MIT Media Lab and elsewhere to say, we really ought to teach people how to do this because we believe that AI is easy and it should be something accessible to everybody, not just computer scientists and not just CIOs and IT teams, but making AI accessible to everybody and easy and fast and accurate. And so that's what the Kendal framework does. And it's built upon the greatest hits of all time in terms of process engineering.
Okay, let me see if I can summarize that. So ultimately, when you started playing with ChatGPT back, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, you were frustrated a little bit by the results. It wasn't necessarily solving your problems that you were asking it to do, whether it's how should I do this, what's the solution for that. And so you took some of the stuff actually we were talking about 6 years ago around problem definition, problem creation, create, I can't even say that, but you know what I mean, problem understanding
Curation,
problems.
yes.
That's the word, Brendan.
The word,
Great.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's my, yes. Anyway, so you took those ideas, added a little bit of other things to increase the specificity of the use of AI. So basically, problems plus context makes for a better solution. Is that right? Does that sort of summarize it?
That's very accurate. But we had started using a lot of these methods going back 15 years ago to build machine learning models. These are classic methodologies that, whether in root cause analysis, for example, is a part of a cornerstone of what we've developed into the Kendal framework to create highly specific, highly accurate context to anchor AI to answer the problems that you have. And there's also an observation that we had very early on, and that is that most people started using AI as if it were a search box, just like
Mm.
Google. And it's an entirely different purpose. The purpose of AI is to solve problems. Even deep research is problem solving. So if you're going to solve problems with AI, then you really need well-defined problems to solve. And you need to understand who you're solving them for. So we started working with manufacturers and bankers, attorneys, and companies that were outside of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Of course, we're located in Kendal Square. That's where the name the Kendal Project came from. And coming from the Kendal Square community, which is one of the leading AI communities in the world, we realized that we need to bridge to the industrial world and the classic industries, finance, biotech, manufacturing, and these education, in these sectors that are really important to job growth across the world. So we uh, uh, we started immediately reaching out to sectors and bringing people together and convening and starting to use this method and use these methods to train models. Um, and when models understand who you are, what problems you have, what your company is capable of doing, and what your processes are, you create fundamental underlying context that increases the accuracy. What we're finding, frankly, is we're finding first pass accuracy of ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and Gemini and others is generally about 35% on first pass. And first pass accuracy using the Kendall framework is up over 95% first pass accuracy, which reduces token consumption by half and reduces time by generally if on an important project, people will spend 40 minutes or so doing prompt rework, if you will, to get to an answer. And using the Kendall framework, you can get there in half the time or less.
What I find, so I play with, Claude at the moment. It's funny. It's a very fashion thing. I was Chat GPT, now I'm Claude. I'll probably be something else tomorrow. Because I'm definitely a dedicated follower of fashion for my AI. And what I tend to do is a bit like I do treat it like a search engine, and I also end up in that sort of spiraling. Oh my gosh, is that an hour and a half gone by?
Mm.
I do that sort of disappear into it because there's so many interesting things that come out, and there's this and there's that, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily take me on to the journey that I need. For instance, I was using it this week to help me build some personas for our online self-paced learning, because I was trying to build up for the next round of classes that we're doing. So I was exploring personas and what kind of personas are the most interesting, to this type of class. And I ended up in this completely black hole where I didn't get any value. I wasn't using the Kendall framework. I apologize. I was literally just playing. But what I'm really excited about is this idea that you can rapidly hone in on actually what you're focusing on and not get sidetracked and not go in the wrong direction, and increase the quality of the results.
Well, that's a big part of what we do with the Kendall framework in our workshops is we bring people together to prioritize the problems people should solve, because our point of view on what should you do with AI is, well, you should solve the problems you have. There's going to be so many point solutions in every single enterprise. We're all going to have dozens of agents. We're all going to have lots and lots of different AI solutions. But if, in order for us to get there, we should be starting with the problems that we already have instead of big ideas. The problem with ideas, especially with AI, is AI can do everything. So where do you start? Well, the problem with ideas when you have an idea about what you should do with AI is it's got a lot of dopamine. You get really excited about it, and then you do nothing. And you have organizations like the Rand Corporation, BCG, and Gartner saying that over 70% of AI initiatives inside of enterprise fail. Well, most of them are failing because they're choosing to take on the wrong problems. So choosing the right problems is a really important philosophy that comes out of problem curation. But then we add on top of this a lot of manufacturing and lean manufacturing thought in and around the fact that, you know, AI is a complex system. And with any complex system, there's only two ways to get high quality output. One is you can keep reworking your output until you fix all the defects and you get to your solution, or you can
Yeah.
build quality in from the beginning. And to build quality in from the beginning, you have to have expert and outstanding context, which is difficult for humans to do because AI is built on language and language has a lot of variation. There's lots of words, lots of language types. And when you have a lot of variation in a complex system, your likelihood of having defects out the other side increases dramatically. So what we did with the Kendal framework is we developed a methodology to package context, to package human language into some standard ways of describing things so that the AI understands that what we really are aiming for two things with the Kendal framework is one is uh, is lucidity for human recognition and machine readable. People need to recognize what people are talking about as much as the machines need to recognize. So if teams need to work together, we need to make sure that that context is both human relatable and machine readable at the same time.
Mm. And so these context you these context blocks, I believe that's what they're called in the
Yes.
framework, right? Give me an example of a context block.
Well, for an enterprise, there are four foundational context blocks that any individual can describe around their job and their roles. And it starts with roles. So roles describe who you are or who your user is. It can be the profile of an ideal customer, or it can be your job role. But roles, we have and I'll come back to this in a little bit. We have actually a series of rules for AI leadership, but roles anchor AI. AI needs a protagonist in order to get to high quality output. So roles anchor AI. So we create a context blocks around roles. Then we also help teams create context blocks around capabilities. Capabilities describes your products, your solutions, but also describes what your organization or team is capable of. And what you're capable of is very, very different to a large language model than your products and solutions. So if Perplexity reads your website, all it's reading is what you sell today. It doesn't help the user of AI find out what you're capable of doing tomorrow. Very, very important distinction. So capabilities is a context block. And then problems. What are you working on now? And what problems are you solving internally? And what problems do you solve for others? So what are the problems that you have? And that is a really clear and very, very important type of context. And then lastly, the last industrial foundational piece of context that is cornerstone to the Kendal framework is processes, because people, solutions, and problems all exist within workflows and processes. And so having standardized ways of describing these four fundamental contexts is one of the things that allows us to accelerate AI understanding your company, your work, what you want to get out of AI, and what problems you want to solve.
So I attended the Kendall Framework workshop with my team, some of my team, and what was really amazing was, somebody that works in my assessments team, and what she found was she very quickly gravitated to actually building a solution for a real problem that's somewhere. I mean, it's sort of on our radar. It's in a backlog somewhere, I'm sure, in my tech team. But ultimately, she quickly created a solution using this model because the AI was really good once we provided the problem. She obviously works this process all the time. She understands the customer probably better than I do, because she works every day with people taking our assessments and trying to get certification. And from that, she literally built a solution. And it was really, really amazing to see. And it really made me realize something that I use AI like everybody else. I throw large bits of text into it and say, help me refine this, make it better, help me answer this question, help me define a key value proposition, that kind of stuff. But what it really made me realize, that's interesting and that's fine, and we'll continue to do that. But you've got this whole group of knowledge workers that, with a little bit of, you know, training in inverted commas, and a little bit of space and a little bit of empowerment, and that's a big question as well. So like the Scrum idea of being able to take ownership of your process and the like, you could equip them very quickly with tools to help them do their job better, using AI to do that. And I thought that was pretty profound, and really speaks to the future of knowledge work, I think.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the philosophies that we are approaching AI with is AI needs to be accessible from everybody from that works in the loading dock to the boardroom,
Yeah.
and it needs to be in plain English or plain language, um, if you will, that is accessible to everybody. We just recently did some work with a large financial institution that is building industrial context across all of their banking. For their bank branches, and the president of the bank asked, who should we bring to the first workshop, and asked, should we bring branch managers, and our answer was, you should bring branch tellers. You should bring
Yeah.
everybody, because everybody's problem is valid. So whether you're a loading dock, a machine shop operator, the chief technology officer, or the CEO, your problem is valid. And so understanding problems from everybody's perspective is very, very important. One of our rules that we have is for AI leadership is AI is a team sport. And that is really a very important thing. Nobody can see everything about their business and their operations. And humans, at the end of the day, are the best sensors. So if you have somebody from a loading dock observing a problem, and you have somebody on the production line observing part of that problem, and you have the CEO describing part of that problem, when you bring it all together, you have really super context that helps the AI understand what exactly is going on in your operation.
Yeah, and I think, that was always the dream back before AI, that we
Mm,
equip every knowledge worker with the ability to describe problems and manage a network, around those problems, or a constellation, or whatever trendy word we used for it, I can't remember. This idea that everybody has a bit of time to solve the problems that get in the way of their processes, the empowered, sort of worker. And now AI kind of takes it up to that next level, because historically the idea was, if we gave tools of problem definition to everybody in an organization, a bank, or whatever, pharmaceutical company, etc., and gave them some time and encouraged their managers to create the space for them to use these tools, that there'd be a large amount of clearly articulated problems that we could then use to drive projects to improve the organization at the right level at the right time. With AI, potentially you can cut out that development bit. You can move that development into the hands of the people that have got the problem, and I think that's really, really interesting and kind of scary. Some organizations will embrace it wholeheartedly, probably get in a little bit of a mess, and then back away completely, and then slowly introduce it, probably, which is the normal adoption model. And then some organizations will always avoid it. But I think that this is, as I said earlier, the future of knowledge work. Yeah.
it's rather extraordinary the time that we're in. I mean, the to see the change and the capabilities of these systems. Part of the thing that makes this so exciting for the Scrum community is one of the underlying pieces that we use to standardize context is actually the user story format that came up with, working at Chrysler back in the 1990s. The user story format is a habit for the Agile and Scrum community, whereas it's not a habit for the rest of the world. But when you describe things as a I need so that, as a when I process, as a role, when I process, I need so that. And the so that is really powerful with AI too, because it tells the AI why. So
Yeah.
the one of the exciting things that uh, Scrum has is that there's already this army of people that know how to define problems in a way that machines understand. And if we can get more people to use standardized language with AI, we're going to get better results because we're taking massive amounts of variation out of this incredibly complex process. And
Yeah.
if we and anytime you take variation out, your likelihood of getting high quality results increases.
Yeah, I think the importance of a structure and structured data, and I can only imagine if you could capture, and you've started doing this with organizations, I see, is if you can capture this across an organization where everybody puts in their processes from their perspective, puts in the problems from their perspective, puts in their own definition of their accountability or role from their perspective, puts in customer, build that body of consistent data, then you're always running those questions on what should we do, how do we fix this problem, on an increasingly structured and well-defined foundation of information and knowledge, which then where you then leverage the body of all human knowledge, which is what the internet is, right? And suddenly that combination, that lens on all that information empowers, potentially creates great solutions.
We refer to that as industrial grade context. And we
Yeah.
need to think about the context that organizations use as an industrial grade level of context. Having context that just giving a large language model access to all of your document library doesn't give the large language model the context of what's important to you and
Yeah.
why you do things. And there's the roles, problems, and processes describe to the LLM the particulars of what it works. So when we build context blocks, roles always includes a why and what are the motivations in that role and what's important to that role. When we create a problem context block, we always analyze how urgent is it to solve this problem? How much value is created if you solve this problem? How much risk is reduced if you solve this problem? Uh, and when you analyze those pieces along with our context block structure has a couple of different parts to it. One is a user story. Three is an open-ended how might we type statement, or
Mm.
a, a, a statement that allows people to express things in an open-ended way. And then we tag things, which is very much based on Ishikawa's root cause, and where we're really picking up manpower, machines, methods, materials, etc. We put it into plain language, but it is those pieces of context put together, along with things like priority and urgency and understanding what's important and motivational for roles. When you put all those pieces together, you create industrial grade context, enabling teams to get what you want out of the AI system.
Mm. I think the workshop made me realize, and our conversations as a product owner, which is really my, I don't know, vocation. I'm a product person, as you well know, Brendan,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I love to do. It just gives me so much more power because ambiguity and experimentation and dealing with uncertainty is such a key part of what I do as a product person, right? I'm trying to, do the most economic to answer questions about the problem that or the product I'm trying to release in the most economic way possible. I'm trying to sort of navigate the cone of uncertainty with the least amount of cost by increasing the amount of context that I provide for my LLM. I can ultimately answer many of those questions without having to do a very expensive build, or even if I do a prototype, I can have the tools help me do that. Obviously working with the team to ensure the sort of quality of it and the like, but I think that was great and very empowering. Okay, so I've got two last questions that I just need to. One sort of like a big question that sort of we've talked a little bit about, and I think our listeners are probably thinking about this as well, and I'd love your take on it. So obviously Scrum is very heavily in the IT software development world, and when we start playing with these engines in this way, providing more context, it makes me feel that the next generation, the sort of like the fifth or sixth generation of programming, is problem definition and context. Do you agree, Brendan? Is this sort of the way that software development's moving?
I think it's not just moving there. I think it's already there. If you look at the capabilities of Cursor and Replit and Windsurfer and these other coding tools, and even Claude 3.7 itself, the one thing that we all have to keep in mind, the quality of AI's coding today is the worst it's ever going to be, and it's only getting better. And we can take today, if you take the Kendal framework context blocks of role, problem, and we have a software development context block. And the context block philosophy is that you just create one single unit of lucid context. So software development is a single unit. And when you combine those units and give it to Replit, it codes. And I was just at the MIT Media Lab this morning at a class I mentor, Ramesh Rasker's class at the AI for Impact. And one of the young students, Sloan student, is running a hackathon tomorrow with 150 Sloan MBA and Harvard MBA students. None of them are technical, and they're all going to be coding tomorrow at Sloan. And so, when you can take MBAs, students who have no technical skills, and get them coding in under a half hour, well, that certainly tells me that problem definition is the next generation of programming language. And now the key challenge to this, where the Scrum community has a huge advantage and a huge opportunity to grow inside their organizations, is the fact that people across organizations are terrible generally at describing their own problems. So just because you can use Replit and you can use Windsurfer, doesn't mean you can actually get good output, because if you don't define your problems and your roles and the user role, the problem the user has, the process where the problem exists, those sorts of things to the AI, you're not going to get, you're going to get terrible results out of it. So it still comes down to having the skills to define problems accurately, prioritize them, and understand that context is a series of sub-assemblies, if you will, which is what our context blocks are. And when you assemble them all together, your likelihood of getting high quality output out of the sixth generation programming language, being problems, increases dramatically. So we think problem design, problem definition, is a skill of leaders of tomorrow. And that's what we're teaching today with the Kendal framework.
That's awesome. All right, last question. We try to keep these short, and you and I could talk for days about
All
this,
day.
about the impact to society, where do teams fit in? Do we still need sprints? There's all sorts of things we could talk about, but we're not going to talk about that. We're gonna leave with one question, which is, I'd love you to give me your perspective. Is, I'm listening to this podcast. Maybe I'm working in a Scrum team. Maybe I'm a product owner. Maybe I'm a Scrum Master, maybe I'm a developer, maybe I'm a consultant helping Scrum teams or Agile teams do their thing. What would be the one takeaway that you would recommend, one or two takeaways you'd recommend that they start thinking about for this future and the use of AI in the world that they live in?
The number one thing is that problems are AI fuel. Context is king in order to understand. AI needs to understand your context, but problems fuel AI. The purpose of using AI is to solve problems, not search. Deep research is a form of problem solving, and yes, Perplexity is a fantastic tool for search, but it's still problem solving as a way of thinking about it. So, one of the takeaways I really encourage all of the Scrum community to take on is go back to using the user story as your prompt structure. So if you do nothing but use a user story as a prompt structure, you're going to improve your outcomes. So instead of spending lots and lots of money on prompt engineering training or AI training for teams, teach your teams to use a user story and start there, because it helps. You're going to learn what your problems are, um, and so that's a quick, easy takeaway for Agile and Scrum practitioners.
Okay, Brendan, where can our listeners get these context blocks today to get going?
Well, today we deliver them in the form of workshops here in the Boston area. However, we're expanding pretty rapidly, and people can find a starter kit at kendalai.org and download a problem, role, and software context blocks that they can use right away, which come in the form of PDFs that are fillable PDFs. That when you fill them in and upload them to the large language model of your choice, they act as super prompts, and there's lots, literally tens of thousands of different applications that you can use these for right away. But we highly encourage people to adopt an approach where AI is a team sport, and you get your team involved, and all of you work using the same structured language to improve your results out of AI. So kendalai.org, and you can get your context block starter kit there.
Great, thank you, Brendan. And obviously they'll be connected. That link will be on the notes for this podcast. So thanks, Brendan. Thanks for spending the time with us today.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, listeners. Today you heard from Brendan McSheffrey, managing partner and founder from the Kendal project, talking about the Kendal framework. We talked about how to improve the results from your generic LLMs by adding context blocks in terms of jobs to be done, personas. We heard about software context blocks and really structured problems, and how that can really help fuel your a generic LLM. It's really interesting, and I'm really excited to hear about that from Brendan today. And thank you for listening, everybody, to today's Scrum.org community podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share with friends, and of course, come back and listen to some more. I'm lucky enough to have a variety of guests talking about everything in the area of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile. Thanks, everybody. Scrum on.